In a conflict of interest, Presbyterian Christians in Kumba in the Meme division of the Southwest region denies worshipping God, preferring a fight on a Sunday, interrupting service once again. In this edition of the news, suspected Amber fighters rain terror in Pia village. Pia is one of the villages in the Menwa division of the West region of Cameroon, burning properties, destroying enormous material at the market in that part of the neighboring West region of Cameroon. Yes, it is a neighboring region to the conflict-stricken Northwest and Southwest English-speaking regions of Cameroon. In this edition of the news, business persons in Limbe at the Mafo market are crying. They have several issues. They say that enormous waste has been abandoned by the company in charge of waste collection. They are crying in this edition of the news. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to know more about the AFCON, the African Women's Nations Championship, ongoing in the northern African country of Morocco. The indomitable Lionesses of Cameroon were on the show yesterday. It was a 0-0 tie with their counterpart from Zambia. You know, it was a horrific weekend to inhabitants of Pia, a village in the Menua division of the West region of Cameroon. The Menua division of the West region borders partly the conflict-stricken Northwest region and also the Southwest region of Cameroon through the Libya-Lem. Yes, suspected separatist fighters rained terror in that locality of the West region of Cameroon over the weekend. The individuals, yet to be clearly identified, attacked the market in that part of the region, burning properties, chasing traders. In the following reports, activities are said to be gradually returning to steam in Pia village, as innocent as it tells us that the attack from suspected separatist fighters was on the 1st of July 2022.
After armed men suspected to be separatist fighters from Libya-Lem division, Southwest region, entered the neighboring Menua division of the West region, attacking Pia village, sending many panic-stricken locals into hiding. They are now out to resume their activities. They recount to Equinoxe television how the incident occurred early July 1, with the market vandalized. They were buying plantains when all of a sudden they heard gunshots. They started running. They were heavily armed and ready to kill. No life was lost, but some persons were injured. Many were injured, including children, women and men. Vehicles and the house of an inhabitant were burned. I returned from the bush where I was hiding and found my vehicle on flames.
Pourquoi ils brûlent ma part de voiture? Ils disaient qu'ils ont vu le vert rouge jaune dans ma voiture.
They set fire on my car, justifying they did so because they saw the Cameroon flag inside.
Et c'est là où ils ont jeté le feu dans ma voiture, qu'ils ne veulent pas voir la République. Même le chez moi-même.
That she has nothing left in her house.
Ils ont tout.
Her belongings were reduced to ashes.
Ils veulent quoi de nous? Nous, tous, on ne connaît rien sur ça.
Though activity stimuli resume, most shops remain closed for fear of a repeated attack.
Nous ne sommes pas en sécurité.
That they are not at all secured and needs to be protected.
Il fallait qu'on nous mette aussi au moins ça en sécurité. À tout moment, ils peuvent apparaître là et nous ne saurons pas quoi faire.
Là où nous sommes là, nous.
We pray government authorities help us.
À nous sauver dans ces genres de souffrance.
L'État de nous ne permet.
The bad state of our roads does not even permit quick intervention.
Même le camion militaire ne peut pas franchir la zone.
We are finished.
À 10 mètres de Decha. Mais c'est grave pour nous.
Within a month, 3 divisions in the West region have suffered attacks from suspected separatist fighters. Banguren and Koptamo in the Nun division, Babaju in the Bambutos, and Fodonera in the Menua division.
It is not the first armed attack in the West region of Cameroon. You got it from Innocent as that 3 divisions of the West region of Cameroon have suffered similar attacks. Yes, the Nun division that borders part of the Northwest region of Cameroon through the Ngokitunja division, but also the Bambudus that borders the Northwest, still within the Ngokitunja and parts of the Mezam division. Then the Menua division that borders the Southwest region from the Libialem and parts of the Northwest region of Cameroon. The people of the West region continue to express fears that their security is uncertain as the armed conflict worsen in the 2 English-speaking regions of Cameroon. It's been over 5 years. It is an armed conflict running now for over 5 years, close to 6 years. And ladies and gentlemen, still in the conflict-stricken region, the people of Bambili, a neighborhood in the Tuba subdivision of the Mezam division, are crying. Those of them who are specialized in doing businesses at 3 corners Bambili sold their shops, 10 in number, reduced to ashes in a fire incident. The cause of the unfortunate fire incident is yet to be clearly determined, as Immaculate Fogwe tells us in the following report.
The fire broke out in the late hours of Sunday at 11 p.m. at the 3 corners Bambili neighborhood, Bamenda 3 subdivision, Northwest region of Cameroon. 10 shops, including a pharmacy, were consumed by the flames. Alerted about the fire incident, the chief of the Army Rescue Unit and his boys took off from Bamenda to Bambili, but it took them longer than expected to reach the scene because they had to brave bullets on their way. Their presence was able to stop the flames from spreading. The exact cause of the inferno is still unknown. The Army Rescue Unit's assessment estimates that goods worth 500 million francs CFA were consumed by the fire.
Many are still to understand why Christians will choose a fight on a Sunday dedicated for worship, to worship God. It is the story of Christians of Presbyterian Church Kumba Town in the Meme division of the Southwest region of Cameroon. They went fighting against yesterday, interrupting church service. Many have qualified the fight at the Presbyterian Church Kumba Town in the Meme as a conflict of interest. It was a terrible situation once again yesterday. Remember last week we brought a report of a fight. They are asking that officials of the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon, the PCC, consider transferring the officials, the church pastor and close collaborators. We have details once again with Simanjik and Gabriel.
Vuvuzelas and whistles blown in the house of God. These are Christians of Presbyterian Church Kumba Town who were supposed to be in church for the Sunday service. Unfortunately, they are protesting just in front of the church. On the main door, a message is placed which clearly states, "No church service until Mary and Tambi have been removed from PC Kumba Town." They have eaten money meant for Sunday school. The little ones don't come to church because they can't go about their Sunday school activities. We want the church authorities to transfer them. It is the second consecutive Sunday that service is being interrupted by Christians of PC Kumba Town. The crisis at PC Kumba Town started on Sunday, June 26, 2022, when Christians of the church staged a stand-up against the two pastors, Reverend Mrs. Mary Wose and Reverend Mrs. Vetin Tambi, who wanted a change of the church's chairlady, Mrs. Nkele Comfort. The Christians say they voted their chairlady and it's only them who can revoke her. As a result of the incident, the Christians locked the doors of the church. For now, The investigation team sent to Kumba by the moderator of Presbyterian Church in Cameroon, Right Reverend Funky Samuel Foba, are still to make public their findings.
In a society with falling moral standards and fighting within the church, experts say that things can only get worse. Yes, while parents of kids also explain that the hardship they go through in Cameroon is the reason why they have decided to push their kids, some as young as 12 and 10, into the streets of Douala during the 3 months holidays to be able to sell and help their parents meet up with their expenditure as far as sending them back to school is concerned. In the streets of Douala, our reporter Lucy Liange Esier noticed that kids as young as 10 are found across the city from the Douala 1 to the Douala 6 subdivision, selling with disregard to the law that states the ages of kids authorized to sell along major streets of the city. Their security is also a cause for concern. Her report.
Holiday periods, we find children who sell different goods in the market. In the Sanaga market of Douala, 12-year-old Fonka Yamu sells green pepper, while his stepsister Grace Ornella on the other side sells tomatoes. They struggle so hard to get customers buy their goods. I sell in the market to help my mom prepare for back to school. In a day, I can sell 2,000 to 5. Usually, my gain is 500 francs if I don't finish my goods on time. It is my first time selling the market. I sell tomatoes, I sell to meet up with. While some parents think it is the only way to support them, others are against minors selling in markets. There are risks because sometimes my child runs to me saying there is no change, while behind the customer runs away with the money. They sometimes steal their money while they return home. At the new Daido market, to find minors below the age of 10 to 15 years who also get misled. Thus, the president of this market has put in place measures to ensure their security. It is true that with their agents we try to reinforce the security in the market or have control of them. We have a security system, that is a post of police which aids in that aspect. A minor's right, generally protected by law, declares that a child below the age of 10 to 15 is yet very fragile to get exposed to some complexities beyond their control.
Les enfants sont exposés à beaucoup de risques parce que même sur le plan médical, il est établi que avant
medically at a certain age wherein a minor do not have the ability to control, appreciate and understand certain things they are exposed to. Girls like boys are exposed to rape. They are sometimes taken to unknown destinations.
Une destination inconnue, il y en a.
On the contrary, some parents, when interrogated, complain of the hardship they face, which pushes them to send their kids hawking. Our little kids help us to sell cause times are hard. At first, little children but now that times are very tough, we need assistance. The certainty of a child's security remains unanswered as parents see it as a means to facilitate the upbringing of their children, coupled with the hardship.
It is not getting any better with the hike in the prices of basic commodities in Cameroonian markets. The situation is exemplified with markets in the city of Douala. A reporter visited the new Daido market and the Sandaga market, the largest market in the Central African sub-region, and observed that the buyers and sellers are complaining of the hike in the prices. We have details in the following report.
At markets of Douala, prices of commodities like vegetable oil, palm oil, melon seed, usually known as egusi, and beef, which are highly consumed, faced a tremendous increase in prices. A liter of groundnut oil that was usually sold at 1.2 now costs 1.5-1.6 in some places.
L'huile maillot, on nous vend à 22 000 le carton de 15.
A carton of 15 bottles of mayo oil is sold at 22,000 francs, so we are forced to sell for 1.5. The director of the mayo company said they haven't increased the price of their product. Groundnuts, that is most bought by household women to serve their large population, is now a nightmare to them, who sometimes switch to the consumption of melon seeds. I came to buy egusi this morning to cook, only to realize that there is an increase in prices because a glass that was sold for 350 is now at 500 francs. Life is very difficult for us now. The government should see into this. Sellers, on their part, are equally surprised as they tend to put the blame on some factors affecting supply.
You see, then now when you come now to the market now, you can't add the price more than what the price is sold in the market, because if you try to add more than that, then you will not sell and people will not buy. At the end, you have already lost.
Beef that was sold at 2.5 now sells at 3,000 francs, a price that scares customers away.
1 kilo de viande sans eau, par exemple, c'est 3,500.
It is not easy for people who come to buy because they complain of the drastic increase in prices. If a woman is given 5,000 francs to get foodstuffs and beef costs 3,000 francs, she cannot cope, so she is forced to switch to something cheaper. A great malaise to many who complain that the increase greatly affects the poor, thus are worried on how a person will survive if the upsurge continues.
You know, we're going to be talking about this in the second segment of news with my guest all the way from the United States of America. You don't want to miss this with our special guest connected from Dallas in the United States of America. We'll be talking with Dr. Jinjakat and Mrs. Imelda Jinjakat, and of course we shall be talking this. But let's first of all give you an avant-goût, that is a taste of what our talking points will look like. It is Cameroon's National Assembly that has adopted a law that allows married and unmarried couples to access medically assisted reproduction the first time. And the country's Minister of Public Health, Dr. Manahuda Malashi, on his part, while defending the bill, said it was a breakthrough in the country's health sector. Annabella is our lady on the story.
Medically assisted reproduction is a technology to support couples with conception of a child in case of infertility or genetic dispositions. It has been going on in Cameroon for some time now, births with no legal basis, reason for which, to avoid excesses, quarrels and confusion in the act of reproduction, the Parliament thought of backing it up with the law. Article 11 of the bill adopted days ago by Parliament now permits married as well as unmarried couples who have problems with procreation to realize their parenthood plans under appropriate legal protection. It provides hospitals seeking to conduct medically assisted reproduction with a legal framework governing their activities. Article 11 further limits the age of medically assisted reproduction to women below 55, though no age limit is accorded to men. The bill underlines the child belongs to the parents who initiated the medically assisted reproduction project, leading us to the three principles of in vitro fertilization or artificial insemination. These include respect for the life and dignity of the human person and total anonymity. While defending the bill in Parliament, Health Minister Manauda Malachi said the bill is very important for families and the country as a whole, as it now permits those without kids of their own to reproduce with medical assistance without fear of being exposed or threatened by a third party. The Ministry of Health is expected to publish accredited hospitals or centers with competence to carry out medically assisted reproduction. Health centers and health practitioners who dare without permission from the ministry would have to be severely sanctioned and might even have their licenses withdrawn.
You know, on Talking Points, we're not only going to be talking surrogacy, we're also going to be talking cardiovascular technological advancement in Cameroon, the Grace Garden Hospital, and also cervical cancer, a public health danger in Cameroon, especially for the female folk. Yes, our guest is connected all the way from the United States of America. It's here we'll call it quits for the first part of the news. Coming up is Talking Points. Stay with us. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on Talking Points. Today we're going to be looking at the public health situation in Cameroon, focusing on three major issues. We are starting with surrogacy, and surrogacy, I mean to say, and we shall be going to look at other issues, moving from cardiovascular disease and the gaps in the Cameroon public health system, and which are preoccupying Cameroonians and Cameroonians who are far away from Cameroon, but also very concerned about the public health challenges of Cameroonians. Tonight we're receiving Dr. Nji Ndinjanka. He is the founder of and CEO of Faith Garden Medical Foundation International and CEO of that is Grace Garden Hospital in Cameroon, Africa. Sam holds an associate degree in applied sciences with specialization in cardiovascular technology and cardiovascular invasive specialist, and advanced Master of Science degree in physician associate studies, as well as a Master of Science in clinical practice management, Master of Business Administration. He has a rich career, and of course we shall be exploring that in this edition of the news. But ladies and gentlemen, let's first of all welcome our guest. Doc, thanks for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for inviting me.
Got a very rich biography, I want to say, and of course we shall be talking about it, also outlining some of the key health issues in Cameroon. But now Cameroon, just like many other African countries, Cameroonians are getting preoccupied by this issue of surrogacy. As I indicated before the start of this news, it is a practice which is rapidly growing in most African countries. Now, what do we understand by this from an expert's point of view, a health official?
Thank you very much, Mr. For me, Armstrong. Surrogacy is in the Western world, in Europe or in America, it is a practice where a couple or a woman decides because of difficulties to use her sperm, her eggs, and then the man's sperm, where it is fertilized, and a different woman who is the surrogate then carry that babies for 9 months. But when the baby is born, the two couples whose eggs and sperm were used in that process, the true biological parents of the child, they are the one that will basically take care of the child from birth. So it is something that has a lot of legal implications in the Western world, and also challenging. Most of the time, a woman would decide to use this method of giving birth because of maybe high risk that she might incur during pregnancy, and or maybe she and the husband might have tried to have baby for long, and because of that challenges, they now seek for a different woman who can carry that baby for them for 9 months. In some countries it is legal, in some countries it is illegal, and some involve a lot of ethical beliefs, and it is something that depends on where you are. And in some areas you have what is called commercial surrogacy. This is where a third party comes in to be able to educate the couple and also educate the surrogate mom and psychologically prepare them for the process.
Right, Doc, you started by talking about the legal issues that surrounds this in the Western world. Now in Cameroon, legally, we are still to hear something to that effect. It is already rumored around Cameroonians that parliamentarians at the end of the June session of Parliament will have to say something with regards to that. But just technically, on a purely technical and health aspects, do we have some implications as far as this practice is concerned? Do we have some repercussions?
Well, I mean, it is, like I mentioned again, in the Western world, for those who have been trying to have a child of their own in terms of the genetic makeup, and that one you call gestational surrogacy, that is where the genetic makeup of the child, the only difference will be that it is being carried by a different mother. In that situation, it has been practiced, and many people have delivered babies and groomed their children that way, and there's been no issues. The kids, they grew up and they are fine. They are just like any other human being. So I know that even in Cameroon, in vitro fertilization is something that I think has been in practice. And so the only difference with having a surrogate mom with what I already know exists in Cameroon, because in vitro fertilization already exists, where the sperm of the man is used to fertilize the eggs, and then now it is inseminated into the womb of the woman. But in this situation of a surrogate, this is a different human being carrying a baby for another two human beings. And like I said, it all depends on each country, and it depends on the moral implications and religious and cultural background.
Did it very well by citing the cultural background, something that it is going to be practically difficult for it to see its way in Cameroon and in Africa. Probably not as easy as the way it's penetrated the Western world because of the differences in beliefs culturally. We're going to be going ahead in this edition of the News Doc. I want to read this to you to say that according to a profile of cardiovascular disease in Cameroon and an impact on the healthcare services and cardiovascular disease have emerged as a major public health problem and impose an escalating burden on the healthcare system in Cameroon. Now, as an expert and a Cameroonian by birth, help us, Doc, in this edition of the news, explain the contextual risk factors of cardiovascular disease, the growth, then also analyze the cardiovascular technological advancements within the country Cameroon and possibly prospects.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Armstrong. Cardiovascular disease is really a major problem in Cameroon. You know, high blood pressure, we do medical missions under, my wife and I, we do medical missions under our foundation, Faith Gardens Medical Foundation International. And whenever we come to Cameroon, we see a lot of people with high blood pressure. When they come, they complain of headache, they complain of blurred vision. And so, just to narrow it simply, let's start with the basics. High blood pressure, I mean, I have many people in my family who, some of them have passed away because of high blood pressure, and sometimes we're not even aware. So what are the simple things for a layman in Cameroon? You know, we eat a lot of fried food. All this fried food ends up as saturated fat. And when they accumulate, they increase our cholesterol. And so there's one other study that was done by Université de Montagne, which you will not believe. I mean, like when you look around, you will be surprised that many people during that study were even dying in the sub-Saharan more than being killed by HIV. And so our food, we eat a lot of fried food, and all this contribute to increasing our high blood pressure. It builds saturated fat in our blood vessels, And all this is, it makes our, high blood pressure is something that builds up to, which can cause stroke, it can cause heart attack. But many people are not really taking care of themselves very well. What we have done on the ground on our part is, first of all, provide education on hypertension, provide education on how to take care of yourself, what kind of food to eat, lifestyle modification. If you have diabetes, this also increases your risk. So diabetes is also a risk. If you have, it makes your blood vessel to be small, and then because it is small, it builds up and causes you to have high blood pressure, which is the hypertension that we talk about. So in terms of technology in Cameroon, we are very happy that we have the Shison Cardiac Center, which is the main center, because when you develop high blood pressure and it blocks your blood vessel in the heart, you can either have a procedure done, which is where I am, my specialty, cardiac catheterization, where we use balloon to open up those vessels, or you can end up going to Shison Cardiac Center, where you might end up having a bypass where they put a vessel to cross the area of blockage. It is an area which I think it is still not really well developed in Cameroon, but we're happy that at least we have a center at Shison. And at Grace Garden Hospital in Dub, we have started building this structure gradually, and we hope that one day we will bring that technology to our people.
Doc, what explains this very slow pace in technological development, whereas, as you rightly indicated, cardiovascular disease and cardiovascular related disease, a public health problem, a serious one to Cameroonians?
So, as you said, thank you again. I want to add other risk factors, which is something that is still very common. Smoking, of course, the nicotine in cigarette is a huge culprit for cardiovascular disease and also for cancer. The challenges we face, when I look at myself with what I do, I work for Children's Health in Dallas under the University Southwestern Medical Center. And I look at the technology we have and I ask myself, why can't we have it in Cameroon or other African countries? I know we're on the path to that. And that is why I encourage my brothers and sisters in diaspora that for us to be able to join our other colleagues in Cameroon and other countries, we have to go home and start doing something. And that is why my wife and I started Grace Gardens Hospital in Dub.
Rightly, your focus surely is not only on cardiovascular disease. There are certainly some lapses within the public health system or issues you see that was necessary for you to come and field in the same way calling on other Cameroonians in the diaspora to come and field. Apart from the cardiovascular related issues, what are some of these issues that you clearly identified and how you, in your own way, trying to tackle them?
Thank you again. In 2011, when my mom was sick, I got to Cameroon to go take care of her in the village of Bangolan Dop in Gokutinja division of the Northwest region. I realized that even though my specialty is cardiovascular, the need in the primary sector is huge. So I remember going there to take care of her, and many of my own brothers, uncles, and many people came. What we did was to provide the basic health the people needed at that moment, which means like giving them medication for high blood pressure, providing medication for diabetes, giving them pain medication, a lot of people with chronic wounds, people with diabetes, and of course, my sister who is recently of late.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Doc. Thank you very much, Doctor. You, as you indicated, you work together closely with your wife and, of course, Mrs. Emerda Ndinjakat. She is also a registered nurse, currently doing her master's in nurse practitioner. She is also the founder of Grace Garden Women's Health Association and also a member board chair, director of Faith Gardens Medical Foundation. She is also been very close on monitoring women, especially those affected by this unfortunate public health danger in Cameroon. We're talking about cervical cancer, which is also a serious threat to the public health of Cameroonians, especially the female folk. Mrs. Emerda, thanks for accepting our invitation. And how serious is the problem of cervical cancer amongst the women folk, those with whom you've been closely in contact within Cameroon?
Thank you so much for inviting me to your show, Mr. Armstrong. Cervical cancer is extremely serious, and especially in developing countries like Cameroon. I am a survivor, a cervical cancer survivor, and after my diagnosis and treatment, I decided to help my fellow women in Cameroon. If you look right now, cancer is the most common disease that has been diagnosed, and cervical cancer is third on the list. Just to tell you how serious it is, if you look at the northwest region of Cameroon, it is highly infectious, and so many women come into the hospital when it is they are at a very late stage.
Very common question, but very interesting and important, is what explains the prevalence and what are the risk factors, especially contextualizing Cameroon and the region, that's the northwest, that you master most.
Thank you very much for that question. It's very important for women to understand the risk factors so that they can help themselves not to fall into those risks. One of the biggest risk factors of having cervical cancer is having multiple sexual partners. And worst of all, if you start at a very early age, like nowadays, many teenagers start having sexual relations very early on, 14, 15, 16. That is a very, very high risk factor for women. Another risk factor is having diseases like herpes or HIV. So if you are immunocompromised, you are at a high risk for having cervical cancer. So there are several risk factors, but that's one of the most prevalent risk factors that is affecting women, especially younger women today in Africa and Cameroon in particular.
To them on the field, what do you tell them? How do you work with them in order to help them stay away from this serious health danger?
So the number one thing that we always advise as a Christian, I always tell my children complete abstinence. But when I speak to the public, I know that that's almost close to impossible. So what we tell them is to have protected sex and to use condoms with every relationship, to make sure that they have one sexual partner, and if possible, to make sure that that sexual partner checks themselves before they start having sexual relations. Nowadays, we also have women who smoke, even in Africa and Cameroon. So smoking is another huge factor. You also have alcohol use. And so those are so many risk factors that fall, not just for cervical cancer, but other diseases as well. So if women can reduce the amount of alcohol intake as well as cigarette smoking, and to have one sexual partner, that will help reduce the risk.
Talking so far, you said you've had the opportunity to touch women on the ground, to work with them in order to help. Then how can you actually rate the work you've been doing so far? Has it actually been yielding the positive results, the desired results? Let's talk more on that.
I really appreciate your question, because yes, I'm working I'm really very involved in Grace Gardens Hospital, as my husband earlier said. Last year, we had a conference for breast and cervical cancer. And from that conference, we decided to create a group called Grace Gardens Women Health Association. And our focus is mostly on women health. So now, as we speak, we have over 350 registered women. And they come every 2 weeks, 2 times per month. and we give them education. While I'm here in the United States, I hold Zoom with them every day. I make sure that I wake up at 3 a.m. because of the time difference to hold meetings with them at 10 a.m. over there, and we always have a topic that we educate them about. Cervical cancer is really one of the main topics we talk about because we have done cervical cancer screenings, and would you believe that we have about, for every 100 women we see at least 10 to 15 positive cases, which is very, very high. So it's very prevalent in that region, and that's why we are doing some work to try to educate the women and to do free screenings so that they know their risk potentials.
Yes, and they've been responding because, you know, culturally too, some people might want to shy away from issues related to sex and the challenges of having sexual education go through to some communities in Africa. Have you been facing at least these challenges?
Yes, we'll be facing a lot of challenges because culturally, you know, where the cervix is found makes it a little bit difficult for women, especially in that part of the world, to understand the screening. So what I do is that I use myself as a testimony, and I tell them what I went through, and I try to educate them on how, you know, they are going to be dressed and the privacy and everything else in between, so that culturally they are not scared that we are coming to do something that is invasive or counter to their cultural beliefs. So with that, it helps a lot. And we've also started using a new equipment called the Gynocular by Guinness, done in Sweden, and I think we are the first or maybe just the second in Cameroon to use that equipment. And we used it on the women just as we are just literally coming back from Cameroon in Dub, and we used it on the women, and they were very, very relaxed, and they understood the treatment, and it helped us to diagnose a lot of cervical cancer cases.
Very much, Mrs. Imelda Jindiakat. We're glad having you responding positive to our invitation on Equinoxe Television. We also extend special thanks to Dr. Jindiakat, who is the founder of Faith Garden Medical Foundation International. It should be recovered. He holds an associate degree in applied sciences with specialization in cardiovascular technology. With them, we had a special moment analyzing some serious health issues in Cameroon. Ladies and gentlemen, we also thank you very much for staying connected to your #1 television channel, Equinoxe Television. That's why we call it off for today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime news on Equinoxe. And of course, interesting programs continue on Equinoxe. We shall be leaving you with Equinoxe right all the way from the nation's political capital city, Yaoundé, and the 8 p.m. news, a full newscast in the French language, all the way from the nation's political capital city, Yaoundé. I will be here tomorrow at 6 p.m., God willing.
Equinoxe Télévision, au-delà de l'image, nous rendons compte.
If you suspect you may have